collecting them. I've got first one. So, Tony, thank you for the dialogue tonight. So this is an interesting way to get started. You have been vocal about your commitment to staying in OUSD to see your vision through. In light of the challenges you face since being in this position, does that commitment remain?
That's a great question. And I get recruited all the time. I mean, just to be honest. I mean, and the thing about folks in this room, I know you do too. But that's not about me as different than you. And there are questions and concerns about the quality and well-being of my family, and folks taking shots and putting my kids in the paper. Sir? I mean, so naming explicitly my family, yeah, Ben. So when you do things like that, it's a real problem. So for me to stay, it's got to feel like my family is off limits. You know? So it's just, you know what? No. Because you take advantage of some other spaces. So the issue for me is about the conditions that it takes to stay in this as a family, and to be able to engage this well, and support from the board is another thing. You know, I have board members that chip away a little bit. So if we're going to be serious about what it takes to engage and actually create a healthy system, then that's a very different kind of question. Because I can give the platitudes, I'm in it, absolutely. But I tell you what, it's a choice. And it's a we thing. And there are ways in which there's an extraordinary cost to being in this particular role. But unless we take responsibility together for changing outcomes for our kids, that's going to be a measure, you know? And if people decide that certain things are unacceptable or acceptable, then that's how it's going to help my decision.
If the proposed state sales tax or income tax, the revenue initiative, fails, what are the likely changes in teacher-student ratio or school year?
So there's a question about if the tax measure fails. So this is a great opportunity. So right now, hopefully there will be two initiatives on the ballot, Molly Munger's and the governor's, that's now blended with CFT. So I think, hopefully, folks will rally and support both of them. However, in Oakland, because of the way we've been budgeting, there would be no mid-year reductions next year. So the way we're handling our budget this year is actually not making any reductions right now and planning. Some of this is because we've had to plan for potential audit fines and findings against the district. So if in fact they didn't pass, it might be on the order of about $13.5 million reduction, which we would cover next year from a reserve. So there would be no mid-year cuts. That said, the following year, the current proposal is that there would be a reduction of the school year. So statutorily, the school year would change. So they would change the state law for the number of school days, and it would be optional for districts to offer more, but they wouldn't then say it's still 180 days and you can negotiate or bargain. They're going to change the base year. So that would be stuff we'd have to figure out in the following year. But we've maintained, and we are among a few districts that have said the 180 days is critical. So we haven't messed with the school year at all. So we're holding on to that.
Next question, Jonathan. Next question.
I'm sorry, excuse me, just 1 second. So this is related to, I think, the question you were just asked, but it's a little more specific. How can we keep good teachers in Oakland when OUSD pays $39,000 for beginning teachers, when firefighters and police begin at over $70,000? And then the second part is, how can high school students do without counselors, librarians, PE, music, and arts?
Yeah. The question is a great one. take the second one. They can't. I mean, we need more adults. We need more funding. The reductions in funding in California, I think many folks, you know, the cuts to education, we're being funded right now at 80 cents on the dollar. They call it a deficit factor. So even the money we're getting right now, we're owed 20 more cents on every dollar. And so it's been deficit factors, that's the way they talk about it. And right now, one of the things that's scary about the governor's initiative is that they are essentially talking about rebasing, which would mean, so we're going to go forward, we'll add a new weighted student formula, but we won't actually give you that money that we owe you. So it's a going forward. So a lot of the conversation right now is about, you've got to give us what you owe us, even if you're going to do stuff going forward. Don't trade the future for the stuff that you owe us back then. So some of this is about our kids deserve more right now, and they should be getting more. The piece about compensation for teachers, we have to, must improve compensation. Personally, I mean, I think this is one of the major things we have to do around, and this is bordering on some bargaining stuff, but I tell you what, we've got to actually increase early. I mean, we've got to increase early. There's got to be a bump in the middle. There's got to be a teacher kind of lattice, like you can do different stuff and stay in the classroom and make more money. I mean, this is also about principal compensation. The number of principals, folks, our principals don't get near enough love and appreciation. They make a choice to be here when, in fact, principal compensation, principaling is one of the toughest jobs there is. And the big high schools, the 3 big high schools, those folks are not nearly compensated at the level they should be. So across the board, the compensation for teachers and principals has to improve. And I recognize it. So part of getting balanced is so when new revenue comes, we can put it directly to compensation and actually kind of have a career ladder that's a lot more meaningful.
Okay, here's a question about charter schools. With the acceptance of Learning Without Limits and the Ascend partnership charters, please talk more about your vision on creating a whole out of a bunch of pieces.
Say that again.
Share more about your vision for creating a whole, creating a system out of these separate pieces. Right. Where does the partnership schools fit?
Cool. This is that's a very interesting question, because charter schools are public schools. And I know that's a real debate, and a lot of people don't feel that or believe that. They are. So by statute, by law, you disagree with the law. That said, we have an opportunity, literally, to create the kind of supports for all of the public schools in Oakland, where they can be connected, sharing resources, and working around quality standards for kids. So back to the strategic plan. The board approved the school quality standards, school quality review. That's actually much of what the charters have been doing already. So we're building a system of quality review and building quality support in every neighborhood, quality schools. I mean, that should be our first and foremost concern. And what we've actually created now is an opportunity to have Oakland Unified School District be a service organization to high-quality public schools. And this new partnership agreement, like I said, there are existing schools where the teachers there are ready to vote right now to go charter and do the exact same thing. We also have existing charters that are saying, hey, we want to come do that. We like that partnership agreement. So the idea, and this is where I know it pushes on folks, but are we more interested in high quality support for kids, or are we interested in the ideology of pro or anti-charter? Personally, I'm more interested in quality schools for kids and figuring out how to do that in every neighborhood, period. And I see this opportunity as actually creating the platform to do that.
Okay. How can other schools also have the benefits of strategies like the TSAs, I'm assuming the acceleration TSAs?
So the design work at both of these schools has been underway for the last 2 years. So this is not just new out of nowhere. This is actually design work. And so if schools are interested in engaging in this, and they have a plan, and they're working on a redesign, and it's part of their choice and their design plan for what they need, then we'll engage it. So we were able to basically say we're going to invest, and the board made a priority of investing in our high schools, and a specific board priority of investing in the climates. So again, if these questions keep coming, like where did this come from? Well, for the last 2 years, and then the board made a priority of high schools, and specifically in the climates. So we've made a following board direction about this priority and investment. So if other schools want to do this, there's the planning process, there's engaging with their community and with their teachers, and we'll decide basically if we can fund it, and it's about trade-offs. But it has to be based on the strategic plan and the goals and objectives that we're trying to get.
Okay, this goes back to the budget. I think it's a definitional question. What is meant by eliminating a structural deficit? Sorry.
That's great. So you can have a deficit. So if you overspend your one-time monies, so if you just get, if I got a birthday check, right, and I spent that on something, but I have my ongoing expenses every month. But then I bought something with my birthday check, and then the next month I wanted to buy the same thing, but I didn't get a birthday check, and so I used some credit. And then the next month I used my credit. And so pretty soon you have created a structural deficit that started by using one-time money and you started using credit. That's what this district did. It was using one-time monies to pay for ongoing expenses, and then it got a $100 million loan from the state and kept doing the same thing and never fixing the structural part, which is ongoing expenses were $40 million greater than ongoing revenue. So if I'm getting money from the state every year, I had to spend $40 million every year based on commitments this district had made. So that's a structural deficit, that the expenses exceed revenue. And so what we've done is now our expenses match our revenue. So that's why we had 100. When I got here, we had 105 schools for 38,000 kids. So starting in this next year, we'll have 89 schools. We had too many schools for the number of kids we had. I mean, that's really hard work. We've had many, many, many staff who don't work here now because we had too many staff for the number of kids. Those are really hard choices. But that's how come now we have matched revenue to expense. That's about the elimination of the structural deficit.
Great. So I just want to acknowledge Director Dobbins from District 6 is in the room. Thanks for being here, Chris. School board member, Director Dobbins. And this is a question related. As a superintendent, what are the qualities of an effective school board member? I know we also have some folks in the room that are thinking about running for school board. Folks don't know there are not four open seats, but four elections in November for 4 of the 7 seats.
It's the same as the city council, 1, 3, 5, and 7. So I think the ability to be kid-centered, to really champion the needs of children, to talk about the goals and objectives of the whole district. I think that there are times, we're elected by district in Oakland. So I've been in districts where it's at large and by district. I think it's really important to advocate for all children. I think it's also important to be prepared for board meetings and to kind of come knowing and understanding what the content of the meeting is, and then being engaged in civic and civil discourse. To disagree deeply with people if you do, but do it in a way that actually deepens meaning and understanding. And a lot of folks don't totally get this, but I report to I report to the board. And as a board, so there are 7 elected. I don't report to individual board members. I report to the board. So the board responsibility for hiring me and managing me. So being in good conversation about what they expect from me. And now we have a strategic plan, very clear deliverables. So I'm expected to perform based on what they approved. That's a very important tool.
Okay, I think we have some students from Youth Together that wanted to come up and ask a question from the student and young men of color perspective. So thank you all for being here, and come on up.
Okay, everybody, they're finishing generating their question, but I am Talia Taylor, site organizer from Youth Together. And here are some of our students also from Youth Together, our lead student organizers and core members. And they're actually from Richmond, and we work in Richmond and in Oakland, and they're here in alliance with our students from Oakland and in support of students in Oakland who couldn't be here tonight.
Well, yeah, that's the introduction. My name is Caesar, and our question is, you say you have a plan to increase the standards for students, but what are you doing to hold teachers accountable for cultural relevance?
That's a great question. So the work around cultural relevancy, there was last year at the teacher convention, Call for Ethnic Studies. So some of the work with meaningful student engagement, they've been talking, students have been talking about what it means to have culturally relevant pedagogy. There's also not only the manhood development work for the African American males, so we're working through the system of manhood development, very culturally relevant pedagogy engaged there. But there's also history in Oakland of culturally relevant pedagogy, not only from the Oakland Alliance of Black Educators, but also for La Raza. I mean, there's deep pockets, but we haven't brought it all together. I think for me, back to the effective teaching and really naming, being able to connect in a relevant way with young people. But here's a little shift. Sometimes this gets dismissed as, oh, we're relativizing. We're treating those kids like they can only learn like this. So to have high common expectations, but to do it and engage young people in ways that make sense to them, that are relevant to them, but to be relentless about the expectation. We have, as described to me by some teachers in Oakland and some youth leaders, a pobrecito mentality. There are some teachers who talk to kids and try to connect with kids by saying, hey, I get how hard it is. So I don't think cultural relevance is trying to say, I get what it means to be you. I think it means understanding your group identity, your individual identity, your histories, and holding high, relentless expectations for your future. I think that looks different for many different communities, but I think that's a common, there's some principles, PLE principles, about having that expectation, but we have to get serious about having that conversation across the whole district. Thank you.
One of the questions that I think was really important was a student asked, do you think that it's fair for a school to have security, police officers, and cameras, and gates surrounding a school for students that are not as bad as everyone thinks? So I'm, speculating that this has to do with youth incrimination and the things that currently go on the ground at our schools, both in all over California when it comes to young men of color. So how are we going to make sure that these schools are an environment that are wholesome and that are building self-esteem of the community and building the education and not bringing them down to build the school-to-prison pipeline?
So this is why restorative justice, this is why positive behavioral, not zero tolerance. I mean, I think the zero tolerance policies around discipline actually breed more zero tolerance. They don't actually build community. And, folks, I can tell you that there are kids who say, I want more security. I don't feel safe. There's gang affiliation. Unless I've got somebody watching out for me, I feel in danger, even in my own school. So how to have this conversation, which is not about criminalizing youth, and let's be clear, the criminalization of youth in Oakland is very deep. And the expectation that what we hold in Oakland about what kids are going to be doing. I mean, the story about Fremont is always about the kids that are outside and around Fremont. It's not about what the kids inside Fremont are doing. And there's some tensions inside, but I tell you what, there are a lot of really good things happening inside the campus of Fremont every single day. And there are kids there, some who say, I don't want any security, and some who say, I do. Some who say we shouldn't have any cameras, and some who say, thank God for the cameras. So this is, again, back to the larger conversation about community. What is it going to look like for our kids to feel safe going to and from school and in school? So it's not an easy answer about just take out cameras and security guards and police. It's, I think, a much more complex solution. We're trying to do some of the relationship pieces, and we got a whole bunch of young people who are not feeling safe yet. So I think there needs to be youth engagement, youth dialogue, not just with meaningful student engagement, youth together. You guys are the RISE Center? RISE in Richmond? Yeah, Richmond. So I think the partnerships across, we've got to get young people leading this work and talking about what it would take to have a different kind of campus. Because until young people are actually taking responsibility for the campus, I think there are going to be some adult solutions that aren't the ones that they necessarily want. Great.
So I think we're going to call that our last question for tonight. We're about out of time. Thank you very much. Tony, we're going to give you just a minute. You'll have like a final thought, and then I'm going to turn things over to Jessica to kind of close us out. So bear with us. We will get everybody out before 7:30.
Yeah, so just two quick things. One, we are at a moment, I really think folks need to know this. The choice about what story you're going to tell is your choice. It really is your choice. The choice about what story you're telling about Oakland, Oakland children, Oakland Unified, how you carry the message forward, really matters. And the second thing is, back to this idea of agency, I think we all have this choice to make, not just about how we talk about the work, but when we find ourselves actually not supporting each other, turning away from each other, how do you turn towards each other even when it hurts? Even when it's hard. And unless we do that, personal story here, I know what it's like to not have a very good support system. And I can tell you that when adults weren't doing the right thing, it was me that was not getting the care. And right now, when we don't do the right thing, it's kids who get, basically, they have lack of opportunity, lack of support, and they're fending for themselves and doing the best they can. But I would say that's on us. So I just really appreciate folks coming out, engaging. It's a great group, and keep on it. Thank you very much.